Greetings. This presentation addresses the questions that were presented during the Texas Success Initiative Assessment 2.0 Information and Implementation Plan Overview, the K-12 webinar that was presented on October 28th, 2019 by Dr. Suzanne Morales-Vale and Keelan Morgan with the Higher Education Coordinating Board. While the first minute of questions were not captured, the rest of the question and answer period is available for audio through this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to reference the actual presentation, which can be found on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's YouTube page, and our contact information is there.
But it will be a different set of numbers. So for example, it might be 210 to 290. We need to have a different range so that we can differentiate between the current version and the new version.
And Suzanne, there was one question submitted that says, I just want to know if graphing calculators will be allowed on the new TSIA2.
My understanding is the same calculators that are currently allowed will also be allowed for the 2.0, but that's something that we can certainly verify with College Board, with the vendor. We'll verify that and get that information out.
And one more question that was submitted, I believe we touched on it a little bit, but it says we need campus administrators to have access to scores regardless of whether the student takes the assessment. Is that possible?
Well, that's currently possible, and it will remain possible for the TSIA 2.0. So if you're not sure how to get access to any student's test results, regardless of where they tested, we recommend that you get together with your test administrator or your College Board point of contact, and they'll be able to walk you through the process for getting access to a student's test results, regardless of where they tested.
And then I don't think we can clarify this point enough times as we launch the TSIA 2.0, but if they pass the TSI for reading and writing on the old test, but not the math, will the student have to take the new math version of the TSIA 2, or do they forfeit previous standards, previous passing scores, and they have to retake all 3 sections?
Okay, so just to reiterate, both the current version and the 2.0 version will have the results will remain valid 5 years from date of testing. So in the example that was just given, they passed the reading and the writing portion, let's say on the current version. They are college ready, they have met the benchmark, and once they've met that benchmark, that college readiness designation does not go away. Once the 2.0, TSIA 2.0 kicks in, again, results are valid 5 years from date of testing. And let me just reiterate one other point. The subject areas and college readiness based on the subject areas are independent. A student does not need to be met in all 3 areas in order to engage in college level dual credit courses. Whichever area, so for example, if they just met in math, they're considered college ready in math, and they can enroll in a college level math course. Same thing with reading and or writing. Typically an English 1301 class will require readiness in both reading and writing. And if your institution, your partnering institution of higher ed requires both readiness in both areas, then once that student has established readiness in both of those areas, they can enroll in a college level English course. Many of the college level courses like history, government, psychology, sociology, they may only require readiness in one area. Usually it is the area of reading. And so if a student is college ready in just the area of reading, they can enroll in college level courses that require TSI, being met at TSI reading. So even if they're not ready in math or writing, again, they can still enroll in those college level courses that have a reading TSI liability. And as we know, every institution also, or most institutions also have college level coursework that does not have a TSI liability. Some quick examples that may come to mind are art appreciation, perhaps even a speech course. And if your partnering institution has those courses, then the student needs to be assessed on the TSIA, but they do not need to demonstrate college readiness in order to enroll in those courses that do not have a TSI liability.
Will graphing calculators be able to be used on the TSIA2?
As I just mentioned, we are going to work with, we're going to vet that question with College Board personnel and psychometricians. My understanding with regard to calculators, whatever is available currently for the current version will remain available for the new version. So, but we will again certainly vet that question again with our College Board counterparts.
When will the online learning resources supports be available for use?
We can get a launch date on that, but at the latest it will be ready when the TSIA 2.0 launches on August 31st, 2020.
If a high school gives the TSIA for entry into dual credit, the IHE has to provide accommodations even if the test is being given by the high school?
Yes. Remember, this is a college readiness test, and it is under the auspices and under the jurisdiction of higher education, the Texas Education Code on the higher ed side. And so, and as a student wishes to qualify for a dual credit course, remember, we say dual credit as a shortcut, but it is still a college level course. So the institution of higher education is the one that will be working with his or her TEA counterpart to determine the appropriate accommodations. And let me just remind everyone, especially for higher ed purposes, the most common accommodations include additional testing time, separate testing area, also the maybe the ability for the student to have agency or ability to take breaks as needed. Well, all of those are automatically built into the TSIA. Remember, the TSIA is untimed. It also has a built-in save and continue later feature that the student can access at any time during the multiple choice components of the test. And so if the student needs a break, needs to go to the restroom, they can click that button. They can leave the testing area, take a break if they need to get some food or whatever they need to do. They can do that. They can take the break anywhere from 1 minute all the way up to 13 calendar days. And as long as they come back and continue on, log back in, they will be able to continue on where they left off and then be able to complete the test. The only exception to this save and continue later feature is the essay, which must be started and completed in the same testing session. And again, other common accommodations include separate testing area, and those are all, again, all available for the TSIA current version, and also will remain available for the 2.0 version.
So Suzanne, when a student selects 3 schools in their student portal, what database are these scores stored in if the student doesn't select that institution?
So the College Board, all the data for this test is housed in a database that is overseen by the College Board. So the database is not in, the data for the test results are not housed where the student took the test. They're housed in the College Board database. Test administrators have access to that database through the testing portal with appropriate permissions, of course. And that's how the data are stored. And so if the test administrator with the appropriate permissions has access to the portal, they log in, and then they can provide specific information enter specific information into the testing portal, and then be able to retrieve the test results.
And I'll answer one question, and I'll volley you another one, Suzanne. It's for retesters. Can they choose the old TSIA after August 31st, 2020? Will the old TSIA still be available after launch date of the 2.0 TSIA? And the answer is no. As of August 31st, 2020, the old or the current version as we know it of the TSIA goes away. And the only version available will be the TSIA 2.0.
Okay, another point that I just wanted to make that our liaison, Kathy Montanese, asked me to remind everyone, the vouchers, the credits that you currently have will be transferable between the current version and the 2.0. So when the test goes away, the current version goes away on August 31st at 12:01 a.m. and the 2.0 version then replaces the current version, don't worry about your test credits. They will simply transfer over.
As of spring 2021, entering freshman college students will have to take the new TSIA 2.0 for college readiness compliance or its equivalent. I'm thinking the question is the TSI, when is the TSIA 2 effective in terms of when will students be required to take it?
For TEA accountability purposes?
No, for entering higher ed.
Yes.
Or this could be K-12, yes. So spring 2021, however you want to, I think if we contextualize it in K-12.
Yeah, if they're trying to look for eligibility in either for dual credit purposes or if the student goes to higher ed in spring 2021, then they will, the only test they'll have access to is the TSIA 2.0 version.
Will students be able to enter two ID numbers in the TSIA 2.0, one for K-12 and one for college?
So we are working with, as we speak, we are working with our counterparts at TEA to establish exactly the guidelines and the requirements in terms of test IDs, student IDs, the county district campus number, and exactly where that information will need to be entered when a voucher is created and or when a student is registered. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have exact guidance on exactly which IDs and which numbers will need to be used.
So given the realignment with the TSIA 2.0, will the TSIA 2 look more like the SAT than the Active Placer now?
No, the assessment will remain housed in the AccuPlacer platform.
And give a little bit more detail on how this will work in terms of sending scores, given that we're going from 3 sections of the test, reading, writing, and math, down to ELAR, particularly as it relates to that.
Okay, so currently you have 2 separate scores for reading and then a separate score for writing. And writing is even further complicated because writing also has an essay score that is required. So the ELAR will only have 1 score, and hypothetically, remember I mentioned earlier that the range 310 to 390 will no longer be applicable for the TSIA 2.0. So let's say hypothetically the range is 210 to 290 for example purposes. So the ELAR will have a college readiness number that will be established through standard setting. Let's say, for example, 250. And then the essay will also, again, be part of that component. And of course, as you know, the essay is on a 1 to 8 scale. And so as part of the standard setting, we will determine what that number will be. Currently, it is the essay score of 4 that needs to be used in combination with the 340.
So if a current sophomore student tests in the TSIA and does not enroll in dual credit courses until um, post-high school graduation, would those scores still be valid?
Yes, as long as it's within 5 years of date of testing. If the student has multiple test results from multiple test administrations on the current version, again, whichever score they want to use, the date of testing is going to establish when that 5-year time frame begins and when it ends.
Okay, and later in our conversation, there was a ask for a reclarification regarding when a student is required to test under the new assessment, the 2.0, and specifically if a student passes 2 sections under the old, let's just say they pass the reading and writing and they're not successful or meet the college readiness benchmarks on the math. After August 31st, 2020, that student would only be required to retest in the math section, and those sections or the subject areas which they had already met the college readiness benchmark, they're good.
Yes, as long as it's within the 5-year time frame.
And we had an interesting question come up. So within the cross-institutional reporting functionality of the platform, will you be able to look up both old TSIA scores and the new TSIA2 scores?
I'm going to say tentatively yes. And our colleague Kathy Montanese is online, and maybe she could provide further clarification on that. But that's a question that we'll definitely get back with you on if we don't have that answer by the time we finish today. Since, let me further elaborate on that, since the assessment results remain valid 5 years from date of testing, it stands to reason that anyone through cross-institutional reporting will have access to those results for the 5-year time frame.
So if the writing, so if we're moving from reading and writing separated to now ELAR, English Language Arts and Reading, is there still a separate essay?
Yes, there will still be a separate essay, and the standard setting process that I mentioned today, which is tentatively scheduled for April, the ELAR content experts will get together and through a psychometric process will establish and make a recommendation for what that benchmark should be. And of course that will be then vetted with the College Board experts, and the recommendation will then move forward to our board for approval, and that's anticipated in the end of April. But yes, there will be one score for ELAR representing the multiple choice component, and then the essay will be part of that formula as well, as it currently is.
And the only point that I would add to that, Suzanne, is for those institutional administrators that may, or if you are even a proctor and you understand the term branching profile, the right placer, the writing, the essay will be part of the ELAR branching profile. So it will be one complete assessment, so to speak. The only condition in which the essay would be able to be administered outside of that branching profile is in a true case of where the student has already completed for the first time that entire branching profile, ELAR plus writing, and then they're taking the essay as a retest.
One other thing to clarify as well. Currently, we believe there is some misunderstanding with the administration of the TSIA. High school students who take the test and don't meet the college readiness benchmark, test administrators have been allowing that score to lapse, and because they didn't meet the benchmark, and they are failing to give the student the diagnostic component, that will no longer be available, either intentionally or unintentionally. The student will be required to complete the entire branching profile, otherwise a test result will not be generated.
Will proctors for the TSIA need to retake the certification exam for the TSIA2?
Yes.
Note a clarification there that since then we have been updated by the College Board that current certifications will be good and test administrators will not have to retake the certification exam prior to being able to administer or access the platform regarding the TSIA2. And this is a really good question. If a student passes the current TSI reading but not the writing, will they need to retest on the new integrated reading and writing TSI2 test?
Yes, if the current version is no longer available, then the retest will be the ELAR.
Will there be new TSIA readiness scores for dual credit classes for TSIA 2.0, or will the readiness standards to take dual credit classes be the same as college ready for higher ed?
Yes, they will be the same.
You want to give a little bit more to that, just in terms of whether it'll be the same, that they have to pass the college readiness benchmark for higher ed, or, well, I guess it is the same.
Yeah, there is no.
It is no other. I'm thinking one thing to note that dual credit, students who qualify for dual credit in ways outside of the TSIA, those are not college readiness benchmarks. That's where my mind was.
Yeah.
Will the cost be the same in terms of units?
Actually, the cost will be going down because we're moving from 3 sections to 2 sections, and we'll have more details. Instead of the maximum cost being $13.60, it will go down to $11 for the entire suite.
Can you please clarify the ELAR plus writing scoring? ELAR will be 1 score and then writing another 1-digit score, or be the whole score, both multiple choice and the essay?
So just to clarify things, rather than calling the essay the writing section, let's call the essay the essay. So ELAR will produce 1 score. Let's say hypothetically, if the range is in between 210 and 290, then let's say hypothetically the benchmark has been established to be 250. So that will be the ELAR number. And then separately, the essay. The student will still also need to meet a minimal score on the essay. Currently, that score is 4 out of a 1 to 8 scale. Of course, the standard setting will need to reestablish whether that remains 4 or whether that does change.
So when students send their scores to different institutions, how will they be received? Will institutions receive paper score reports, or will the scores be uploaded into the accepted institution's College Board dashboards? So as of now, the functionality when the student initiates the sending of a score report to an institution, within the platform on the IHE side, there's a email that's associated with their account to receive those scores. Once the scores are received, the IHE can go in and with their credentials unlock the scoring profile. That score profile that the student has sent to them, which just means they don't have to access it through cross-institutional reporting. I can't say as of now, what institutions individually will do with that information that they receive, but just to note with the previous question that we addressed in terms of will students be able to access their TSI scores through their College Board accounts, and the answer to that question was no, that the TSI is held in a separate platform, so a separate database of scores. So I could anticipate that IHEs would not be transposing those scores back into any College Board dashboard that's associated with maybe SAT scores that they have in place for students. And the last several questions that we got regarding where will this information be posted? We're going to clean it up definitely, and we will have it posted on our Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board YouTube channel. And on that, it will contain all of our the slide deck as well as the audio. And then we'll have in a separate location on our Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board website the slide deck as well as the link to the recording out on the YouTube page. And then we'll also include a frequently asked questions document that will encapsulate some of the questions that we received today.
Okay, and I see there is another question about calculator usage.
That's what I want to know.
Oh, we already got that. Okay, great.
When will it be available?
Within a week.
Yes, the webinar link and recording will be available within a week.
It was said earlier that students will have access to the free online learning resources after they complete the test if they did not meet the college readiness benchmark. Will they have access to any materials prior to the test?
That's a good question. We'll clarify that with our College Board counterparts. I'm sure if it is sort of using it as a preparation tool, there may be a small cost affiliated with that, but of course I can go ahead and have that verified, and we'll let everyone know. But currently the free component is attached as a tool to improve students' knowledge and skills, to establish where they are, and then use it as a tool to improve their knowledge and skill levels for retesting purposes.
And do you have any closing remarks, Suzanne?
No, but we want to thank you again, everyone, for your patience and some of the technical issues we had. And our contact information is here. Absolutely, please feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions, or if you share this webinar with your colleagues and more questions come up that we have not yet addressed. So thank you very much, everyone. We want to remind everyone that we will have another webinar on Wednesday, this time with the higher ed audience in mind. So a lot of this will be repeated, but it will be for our higher ed audience. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.